everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio, and today I'm sharing with you my Queen Bee paper art doll. I started out with the Enchanted Gallery's little template, and I downloaded this as a long time ago, but I did check and make sure it's still there. Then I had modified it because I don't like Barbie doll looking things that have super skinny waists and big boobies, unrealistic. So I had altered it already to be more realistic, and then I altered it again to make this a, well, pleasingly plump paper doll. The idea I'm using is, well, here's what happened. I was invited to join a group that swaps art dolls, paper art dolls, and I joined the group, and then this is their second swap that they've done so far, and the theme is fairy tales, fairy tale characters. And I have a book of the original Grimm fairy tales that has one in it called The Queen Bee, and it was always one of my favorites because it's about empathy about animals, and not squishing ants just because they're under your foot, stuff like that, and how you can be rewarded for being empathetic towards other creatures in the world. And I've always loved that one since I was a child. So I decided to make the Queen Bee character, although this Queen Bee is human. But in order to make her more what I thought she would look like, I needed to make her into a pleasingly plump doll. So I altered her torso and the arms and legs and even the shape of the face to make it more like a little chubby girl, basically. I made the legs shorter. I made the torso wider. I made the face more rounded. I made the arms more plump, and the legs and stuff. So I did quite a bit of altering, but it started out as the template. So then I took a piece of heavy watercolor paper, 140-pound paper, and I collaged both sides of the paper, and then I toned it a little bit with some watered down white gesso and some portrait pink watered down acrylic paint. And then that's going to be the body of my doll. Now this video is in two parts. The body, the head, the face is in this video, and then the making of the dress and the wings is in the other video, because this whole process took me, well, filmed video was over 5 hours, and I didn't film all of it. So that tells you how long it took me to make this whole doll. That's what it is. It's art. It's an art doll. So I've cut out all the pieces, and I've already put it together once just to make sure that everything is good and I don't need to make any adjustments. Then I took it back apart, and those are my pattern pieces for the future. I already have pattern pieces of kind of a normal looking one that I might use in the future, but I will probably continue to swap with this group, so you'll be seeing more art dolls on my channel as I go through. This is my favorite way of making the body. I like having it be skin toned, but I like having all the extra interest of having different papers like dictionary paper and music paper and tea bags and all the different like antique papers and stuff. I think that looks cool. So that's why I make my base of my doll like this. You've seen me do it before on the live show, the Art Joy of Sharing live show, where we were making art dolls, messing around with that concept of art dolls. And I made my body in the similar way, although I will try to find that video. I don't think I made a speed up of that, so if you really, really want to watch it slow, real time, I will link in the iCard above or the description box below the link to the live where Peg and I were working on talking about art dolls. And that was when I made my other pattern that's not quite as pleasingly plump. But I never did dress her. I still haven't made her any clothes. She's laying in my room with naked. She has purple hair though, so she's really cool. Um, so then after my doll was complete, and by the way, I used graphite Stabilo All pencil on all my drawing, and that is a water soluble pencil, and so I did use my water brush, and you saw me do a little bit, but of course I've cut a lot of this out to make it shorter. I used that graphite to go around all the parts and make a shadow around the edge, and to, you know, shadow in underneath the breasts and underneath the belly button and around the insides of the legs, things like that, insides of the arms. I used that graphite pencil that I drew out the pattern with before I cut it to do all that shading. It just is an easier step. And now I've got some white acrylic paint that's been watered down and my Neo Color 2 water-soluble crayons. And I'm using a water brush. This is a water tank brush that's filled up with water on the inside. And I'm coloring the different colors onto my craft mat with the crayons and then picking them up and blending it onto the doll using that watered down white paint to go along with it. It makes it more smooth, and I can add highlights and deeper shadows. And this is just a process of layering. At some point you'll see me dry it and then layer on some more until I'm happy with the density of the color. So this isn't a slap it on and you're done thing. This is, you know, adding more colors, changing colors. I'm using towards the yellow tone of skin tones, like ochre colors and terracotta, orangey colors, instead of pinks, because of course she's a bee. She's a queen bee. So she would be yellow and black, right? Not pinky. So I'm not using any real bright reds. Like the blush and shade on her cheeks is that orange color. And I just keep layering it. I just keep adding it. And this process alone takes some time because you're just adding and adjusting, and eventually you come up with a nice smooth blend because you're blending in with the acrylic paint. This, however, you do need to be careful with your water brushes. This is how I ruin my water brushes, but I have been able to clean them out using Murphy's Oil Soak and a straight pin, so I have fixed some of them, but my brand new ones I just got, I'm not using with acrylic because I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get the valve all gunked up with acrylic. But I like having the water available in the tank there for me to thin, and when I'm doing this kind of a blending and watercolor collection technique. I think it works really well. There's some more yellow, some more white. I just keep doing this for a while, so a large part of this first video is just this, coloring the doll. This doll is fully articulated. It has mini brads at every joint, so it bends at the shoulders, it bends at the elbows, it bends at the wrists. The neck and head can move back and forth. The legs can move. The knees bend and the ankles bend. So it is a paper doll, but it's not stiff. You can pose it. You can move it around and, you know, change its body attitude and angle, which is what I prefer. I like to make this kind over the very static kind. Of course, there's all kinds of art dolls. There's tons of them out there. You can make them out of wood shapes. I'll link some of them in the iCards that I have made in the past. You can make them out of wooden blocks. You can make them out of found items like bottles and things like that. There is no limit to this art form. There's so many interesting and creative art dolls out there. But in this particular group that I was invited to join for swapping, it is paper. It has to be all made out of paper because it's mailed, and that's just easiest for everyone to mail something that's light enough and flat enough to fit in an envelope. Otherwise, who knows what you'd be getting. One person could get a paper thing and the other one could get something really heavy made out of iron. Who knows? So this is an art form I really enjoy. I just don't show it very often and I don't do it very often, but I think it's fun. I think making little people is just fun. I really like it. And so I'm glad that I was invited to join this group and I can participate and hopefully receive some really cool ones from other people with ideas that I hadn't thought of so that I can think about it. So and put them up in my studio and be entertained by these cute little people in my studio. Maybe they can become my muses. So I also added in some of the yellow toned paint into the body as well. This is where I'm getting out a bronze colored paint pen. Posca doesn't have copper or bronze. Those sillies. Somebody should call them and tell them to get one. So that's my orange glitter Posca, and then I have a gold Posca, and then I was getting out the bronze one, which is from PBO, which you will see in the future at some point here. So I'm getting to be pretty happy with her face. I do end up using the dimensional, what's it called? I have the Mod Podge brand. Dimensional Magic, is that what it's called? It's like Crystal Effects or Glossy Accents. That's the one that most people have. It's from the Ranger brand, Glossy Accents. And it makes the eyes and the lips real shiny. But it's hard to see in pictures and video, so you'll probably never notice it. So then I did the same thing on the back. I am making this doll all the way around. So it's not like a flat piece of paper that has a little outfit that you put on top with the tabs. I put her dress and her hair and her body and everything all the way around. So she's completely covered like a doll. Now I decide to start working on the hair, and so I'm using a piece of deli paper and laying it over the top and just drawing a guide for myself, a pattern, so that I can get the shape of the hair cut out to fit correctly. And you've seen me do this before. I do this when I do paper painting. It's an easy way to get a shape correct by tracing it. And then all I do is just glue that pattern onto the paper, or glue paper onto the pattern actually. Excuse me. Right over the top of it. And then I can see those lines and I can cut out the shape on the back. So this is a piece of print your weight paper that has shiny black on it. It's got kind of like a little glitter or something. It's glitter paper, but it's not a cardstock. It's a lighter weight. And I use the piece that I cut out to cut out a piece for the back as well, only I don't cut the face out. So it's just straight across the back to cover the back of her head. And it's almost like a little wig. But I remember, of course, that a bee has antenna, so I need to make antenna for my little queen bee. And so I make a couple dots on the top of the hair where I'm going to poke holes. And here's my hole poker. It's called an awl, A-W-L, if anybody wants to know. And I poke the holes in the hair, and then I use my pencil to mark onto the doll and poke those as well. And the way that I'm going to fasten these is I'm going to put them through the front hair, through the doll's head, glue them down in the back of the doll's head, and then glue the back of the hair over it so that you don't see the ends. And this is copper wire that I have folded in half and then poked through. Then I put a little bit of glue and a piece of masking tape to keep that down on the back. And you'll never see that because the back of the hair is going to cover it. Same for the other one. It's just copper wire, copper craft wire. Zebra wire, I think it's called. I sometimes use it for jewelry making. Because silver and gold got so expensive, I started to make my beadwork and wire wrapping stuff with copper. Because for some reason the market just jumped. So there I've glued the back of the hair over it, and now she has a little antenna, but you don't see where they're attached. And then these pieces I have cut from a piece of jelly printed paper that has some golds and coppers on it. It's jelly printed black cardstock, and I've cut little strips, and I will continue to do this all the way around the back of the doll and the front of the doll to give her highlights and streaks in her hair to make it more interesting, because otherwise it'd be just pretty flat and boring. So at the end of this video, you'll see the front and back close up, so you can see what effect those little strands, I guess it would be strands of hair, have on the total effect of the hair on the doll. Yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So then here's that copper colored PBO paint marker, and I'm just drawing in some highlights as well that are just flat on there, of course, because it's just being drawn on with a marker, just to give it some interest. Sticking with the yellows and the oranges and the coppers for this whole doll, because she's a bee. She's the queen bee. Okay, one more thing for her before I start making her dress and things, and that is a little crown. So I take a piece of gold metallic cardstock and cut it into kind of a crescent shape, sort of. That's going to be her crown. And then again, using the Dimensional Magic, which is like glossy accents, only it's the Mod Podge brand, I glue on some sequins and some gems and different things onto this little crown shape to go on her head. And then that will be the last thing I do to the head and body. In the next video, we'll be making the wings and the dress. So I start out with kind of these interesting matte gold ones, but then I remember these other ones that have holes punched in them that I received in Happy Mail, and I decided to use some of those. So I'm covering the whole thing with the Dimensional Magic and then putting them in. The trickiest part is getting the things stuck on without sticking them to your fingers or your tools. That's always the hard part. So I use a gold one and then two little hole punched orange ones that have kind of some glitter on them. Then the punched out orange ones in the center of the gold one and on the edges. And then I have some just like crystal colored sticky gems, and I'm using the very tiniest ones on the sheet and putting one in the middle of each of those, and it looks like a crown at that point. It's very shimmery and glittery and dimensional, and it's a crown that a queen should have. So this thing does take a bit to dry, but eventually it does dry while I'm still working. I mean, it doesn't take, I don't have to let it dry overnight or anything. It dries pretty quickly. So there's all the little diamonds, and then I'm kind of clearing up some of the stuff that's spilled over. And then once it's dry, I just glue it on her head. So go ahead and watch the second video now if you're still interested in the process. And if you enjoyed this one, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and a comment and subscribe and share and all those things. That's it for me for this one. Bye-bye.